morning, everyone. I'm Brian Yule, the Master Superintendent of Uplands Golf Club. This morning I'm here with Chris Paul, the arborist with the municipality of Oak Bay. Over the years, Chris comes on property to help us review trees that are potentially hazardous, trees that are dying. And in this case, behind Chris and I, we have a Gary oak tree that Chris and I have been looking at for probably the past 2 to 3 years. And you can see on the top of the Gary oak, there are numerous deadwood showing up on the top of the canopy. And Chris, the initial thoughts are on observation here. You're seeing this deadwood on the top of the Gary oak. What does that indicate that you're seeing?
Well, it would indicate that there's not enough nutrients getting to the top of the tree, which is often a root-based thing. It's either root or water-based, and water isn't a problem here. So as the tree root system starts to deteriorate, so does the crown in response to the lack of nutrients.
Okay, and over the past year or so, we're starting to see some significant branches drop off this tree. Some large stems dropping off here, and we're in a high traffic area, or a high target area, as you would call. In other words, we have pedestrians walking from the 7th green to the 8th tee. So I wouldn't mind that if you could just kind of walk us through on your inspection what you're looking at, and we'll go have a look here. How old do you think this tree is, Chris? Ballpark?
Probably around 100, 125 maybe.
Okay.
It's about the right size for a tree of that age.
Okay.
And it's had fairly good growing conditions, I would think. So it'd be that size about right.
Okay, so one of the first things that you would do for inspection on here, what kind of work are you doing here?
Well, what we look for at the base is there are some signs of there are root diseases show up in certain ways. Sometimes there's bark falling off at the base. Other times there's mushrooms that form at the base. Sometimes there's fungal conchs that form right on the trunk. And with Gary oak, sometimes there's absolutely nothing showing.
Just age?
They just don't, they hide it very well.
Okay.
There may be root decay below ground, but you can't see it. So we go looking for signs of it. And in this case, we'd be looking for loose bark that's coming off where the fungus comes up underneath the bark.
So I noticed you pulled off some bark over here.
We have a little bit here.
So you actually were just able to pull this off by hand here, and
there is, so without excavation, it's hard to tell what's going on with the roots, but we can see here the bark has come off right down to I think it's down to the wood.
Yep.
It's a bit hard to tell.
Okay.
Without cleaning it off. So there's something's gotten underneath it there, and I don't see the signs that would be there with armillaria, which is one of our more common root diseases here.
Yeah.
But there is some interruption here in the.
We've seen a lot of armillaria take out our Gary oaks over the years when you've been here, and
a lot of that is they're a tree that likes to be in a drier environment during the summers.
Yep.
That's why they live on the south coast of Vancouver Island.
Okay.
And so being in areas that have higher water tables, you end up, the armillaria gets the upper hand on the tree because it likes the moist environment. So it's a disease that can affect trees on overwatered sites.
Now they call it a shoestring fungus. What's that all about?
Yeah, the shoestring, there's little black rhizomorphs, and that's what goes up, the mycelium, and then the rhizomorphs go up underneath the bark, and that's when we see the bark falling off. We often see the rhizomorphs, and there were some black lines down there, but I couldn't really pick them off. But there are some little black lines down there that may be rhizomorphs.
Okay.
Underneath there.
So you have a hammer in hand. What do you?
With a hammer,
you do some.
If you have a very rotten, if you have a hollow trunk because of decay, it will sound different.
Yeah.
I've sounded this tree. I didn't find anything that was really obvious.
Yeah.
Again, Gary oaks, solid above ground, can be quite different below ground.
Right. So you just bang it on the bark.
Just tap on the bark and kind of listen for the resonance.
Okay.
And there it sounds a little bit hollow.
Yeah, a little hollow there. Yeah.
A little difference between that and that.
Yeah, and
it's tough to tell.
Yeah, a little hollow back there. Yeah.
But that's what we look for. And like I said, there were no really obvious signs of of hollowness in this tree,
Okay.
but that was what we'd be looking for,
Okay.
the hollow sounds.
Now, one of the other things that we saw, Chris, is we saw some splitting at the top here.
Yeah, that's that one stem that grows out to the west has a longitudinal crack in it, which is likely a crack that's formed by the canopy twisting in the wind, and the way the bark's pushing off is that the wood is growing underneath to try and grow over the crack.
So we're seeing the crack coming down almost 4 feet
Well,
into the bark there, starting to.
looks like some more disruption in the bark coming down.
Yeah.
And a little bit more off to the left-hand side here.
Okay.
So
this has been a concern, obviously, for removal for us. With again, we have 300 people a day playing golf and walking through this high target area. So if you recommend removal on this tree, is this a good location for us to plant another Gary oak here?
it probably is.
Yeah.
As I say, the water thing is something that they don't adapt well to once they've been there.
Okay.
Younger trees going into this kind of environment, they have a little bit more ability to adjust and grow in a wetter environment. When they've grown for a long time in a drier environment, they don't really like the change.
Okay, so we do have some drainage actually that goes right through here to our open ditch, so I'm hopeful that this is a good location here. And then the last question for you, Chris, when's the ideal time for us to be planting our Gary oaks? We planted, I'd say almost 60 Gary oaks on property in the last 3-4 years, but when is the ideal time that we should be putting something?
The best time for planting all trees really is when they're dormant and the leaves are off.
Yeah.
Late fall is good, or even late winter.
Okay.
Obviously, if the ground does freeze, that's not a great time.
Yeah.
But this time, in September through October into November is good because the ground is still somewhat warm, and and it's starting to get moist again. So you can put the tree in, and then you don't really have to worry about too much watering during the first 6 months.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to explain to everybody what we're doing here.
You can look at a tree like this and you could say, we could take the dead wood out, and would that make it safe? Well, for things falling, it makes it safe. But the biggest concern is if the tree is deteriorating this way, is something going on down below ground.
Yeah, and we've lost actually 3 Gary oaks over here. One just past the drinking fountain, about 50 yards away. It actually fell right down, and in that case, there was that armillaria root rot. Yeah. You could see the shoestrings coming off of the bark. Is there any chance that could have spread through soil? Or
for that distance, I would say no.
Okay.
It is something that can transfer through root grafting, but not from that distance.
Okay, perfect. So, all right. Well, thank you very much for your time, and happy golfing, everyone.